Monte Besler, and I'm with FRACN8R Consulting, actually the owner, and I'm here in North Dakota, and I'm involved talking about the Williston Basin API chili cook-off.
Outstanding. We just had gumbo on last week, which is coming up around the corner. And then, of course, we got like you said, the granddaddy of them all, kind of the one that kicked it all off. And talk to me a little bit about this chili cook-off, the history, and what you know about it.
Well, it started in 1981. This is actually the 38th annual chili cook-off. I actually became involved with it in 1987 when I moved from Dickinson to Williston, and been involved with it to some level ever since. I've been the master of ceremonies. I've been the president of the API chapter, so I've been involved, and I've been a board member many years. So the API Chili Cook-Off is one of the three primary fundraisers that the Williston Basin API chapter has for their charitable donations. This is the first one of the year, and then we have our golf tournament in July, and then we have a banquet, awards banquet in November, typically. So those three make up the majority of our income producing. The API chapter, of course, is the local chapter here, and we donate to quite a few local charities, school events. We also have several scholarships. We have endowments at Montana Tech, UND, and here at Williston State College that are fully funded. In fact, this chapter here is pulling up and I believe this is just counting probably the last 10 years or so that we really started tracking our donations. We're pulling up on $1 million that we've donated to the endowments and local charities. So we feel pretty good about that. It's a big event, 25 teams. It's been held at the Grand Williston Hotel for as long as I can remember, and it's a pretty good deal.
What kind of chilies do they have? Is it primarily your standard chilies from 1 to 5 alarm, or is there kind of some alligator, or you know what I mean, some different chilies?
We used to originally, probably the first 10 years or so that I was involved with it, we tried to follow the national chili competition rules, not because we were a certified event, but just to standardize it for judging purposes. But eventually we realized that, hey, this is a charity event. What we want is people to come. We want people to see things and do things that are going to make them want to come back. And as a consequence, we've migrated away from that. And yeah, today you see several different kinds of chilies. People tend to still stick to the, I would call it Norwegian chili, in that it's not flaming hot. It's meant to be chili that everybody's going to enjoy to eat. You'll find the occasional real hot chili in there, but for the most part, it's middle of the road on the fire alarms.
Not too many 5-alarm chilies, or no Texas Pete chili, huh?
No, not normally. I mean, I won't say that it hasn't happened, but that's not really our goal. Our goal is to, one, cook a lot of chili. We do have standards on how much they need to prepare so that there's enough to last. And you can usually tell the best chilies that people like because they're the ones that are gone first.
Yeah. So really, it's more about raising money and making sure people get a good quality evening through food and entertainment, as opposed to sticking to the rules of the national chili, huh?
Exactly. In fact, you could cook the exact same chili. In fact, you could freeze half of what you cooked. Come back the next year after you won the championship and never place.
So you get
judges.
Yeah,
the judges are people off the street. They're not trained in any way or another. A lot of times, just local well-known individuals that volunteer their time in exchange for drinking a little wine and adult beverages and eating a lot of chili and lifetime supply of Tums or something. I'm not sure.
Right. Pepto-Bismol at the door, right? They've got competition, bravado. In the Bakken barbecue, I like to call it barbecue bravado. And so the chili competition would obviously have some bravado. How does the competitions get? Does it get pretty heated amongst the competitors, or is it more about just, kicking back and having a good time?
Well, there's a lot of, fun competition.
Right.
We try to create a competition between the teams at a number of levels, not just the cooking of the chili. There's trophies, awarded for the winners and at several levels. There's a People's Choice, but we also have fundraising awards for teams that are able to bring in the maximum amount of money, independent of the proceeds at the door, and donations. Teams put on games. Every team is expected to have some type of game. Usually, a lot of them are drawings or little events where the dart throwing or there's all manner of games that each team puts on to help fundraise money, and then they give away prizes as well. All of that goes into picking the most valuable team, for example, that also gets a trophy. We sponsor the trophies also, so that's just another way we make money. So it's all about having fun and generating as much money as we can to give back to the community.
Talking Monte Besler about the API Williston Chili Cook-Off. He's also the owner, proprietor of FRACN8R Consulting. Just a quick commercial for you here. Appreciate you taking the time to help promote the Chili Cook-Off, but at least give you an opportunity to talk about your business a little bit. I imagine, your time and everything is well loved by the API people. I mean, you know quite a bit about the oil and gas business, but what is the FRACN8R Consulting business? What is it you guys do?
Well, it's a single proprietary ownership. So I'm a independent hydraulic fracturing design and I guess you call it supervision consulting. I do work with other consultants, but primarily I provide what I call the North Dakota experience in fracturing. I've been involved with North Dakota since 1981. The Bakken's nothing new to me. The very first well I fracked in North Dakota was in 1981, and it was a Bakken well.
No kidding.
Yeah, so been at it. I did work on the very first horizontal Bakken shale well in 1987, I believe. So.
I want to sidebar for just a second, if you wouldn't mind, and ask you a question, because you've been working in the oil and gas industry for what, 30, 40 years?
That'll be 38 years coming up here.
So yeah, almost 40 years, and you've lived through the booms and the busts. And have you been in Williston, primarily Dickinson and Williston, that whole time?
Yeah, all but the first couple of years out of college, I worked in Texas, but
so you've seen it firsthand in terms of a lot of the oil and gas companies donating money to the local schools and donating to the local hospitals and donating to what was that outfit we talked about a few years ago down in Dickinson that we Able, thank you, Able. I keep thinking Head Start, but it was Able, ABLE, Inc. Able, donating to things like that, to where I just got off the phone with Brent Boger with the new North Dakota tax revenue history. So the historicals over the last 10 years, how much each county has received in that sort of thing. And one of the things that we kind of got off on, sidebarred a little bit, was, okay, not only does the state of North Dakota get a lot of tax revenue from the oil and gas world, and it's like 50% actually. And then when you take a look at the nomadic employees that buy the vehicle registrations and, are living in the hotels, and so they use the sales tax and the recreational taxes and that sort of thing. We kind of said maybe actually if you took a microscope further, it would be like 60% of taxes come from the oil and gas industry indirectly. But then we even got a little bit further down and started uncovering these gifts. The $1 million One Oak gives to Watford medical community so they can actually have an emergency room. And, these big donations that, quite honestly, a lot of times the government was funding in the past because these are pillars and staples of the community. What have you seen over the last 30 years when it comes to that side of things, that donation side where, the Ables and the Head Starts and that sort of thing? Have you seen that over the past, 30, 40 years, or is this relatively a new phenomenon, I guess is what I'm asking?
No, it's been going on. I've been an API member in other organizations like the Society of Petroleum Engineers, and the whole time that I've been in North Dakota, and it's been continuous. The donations to different events and helping schools out with playground equipment and sporting teams, small school sporting teams with uniforms, and the list goes on. And a lot of that information and a lot of those donations and monies kind of go under the radar, unfortunately. I don't think that our industry has been really good at promoting that kind of stuff, but I think it's because we just don't see it as being as, I don't want to say the word special, because it is special, but we just think it's something we should do, and so we don't go out of our way to promote it, but we probably should. I mean, it's a phenomenal amount of money.
It's a tough one. The thing is that the oil and gas industry a lot of times is damned if they do and they're damned if they don't, because they'll give the money and then they don't say anything, and then they think they're trying to be quiet and buy somebody off, and then if they do promote it, then they say, oh, look at them, they're bragging. So no matter what they do, the opposition's just going to spin the narrative negative against them when, in reality, that's not ever the intention of the oil and gas industry that I've seen. Now, I've only been a part of this industry for 10 years. And the 10 years that I've seen has really opened my eyes to how important the community and culture is to the oil and gas industry. I just really don't think people that live outside of those communities really understand that. And I think they should. I really think they should, because like I was saying, if you start talking about how much a state is reliant on taxes, and then you start uncovering that onion, and then you notice that not only does a state of like North Dakota, for example, get a lot of money from the oil and gas companies, the oil and gas companies still are giving to the nonprofits and to the local communities that can't have enough government money to pay for simple services. That's just amazing to me. I've never seen any state like that. Have you? You lived in Texas.
No,
but
it actually, the state is, and the oil industry in this state has been recognized nationally, but again, within the oil industry, for that very fact of how well we do in this state at supporting local industries. And for instance, some of the North Dakota Petroleum Council events that go out and teach the locals about things in the oil industry, what's actually going on a well when we're fracturing, helping them out with land lease information, stuff that doesn't happen in every state. And I think North Dakota has been leading the way for a few years now, for certain, in that regard, and should be celebrated. What you were talking about before, the damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's interesting because if you look at the API chapters, for instance, that we're talking about here for the chili cook-off, the gumbo cook-off, they're actually expressly forbidden by their bylaws that come down from the parent API organization from lobbying in any way, shape, or form. Yet they could be accused of it.
Really?
Yeah, it's written right in the bylaws. I actually had to enforce that a couple times when I was a past president of the API chapter here. So.
Well, let's talk about that cook-off one more time. Let's kind of give people a little bit of a summary and what to expect, that sort of thing. So, is there any prizes or raffles, or if you're a cooker, do you in addition to the trophy, do you get bragging rights, or just kind of give us an overview?
Oh yeah. There is the trophies are nice trophies, and but there are small. There's door prizes given away to everybody. Everybody qualifies, including the team members. And then, as I mentioned before, at every booth they have games, which some of those prizes are awesome. I mean, like big coolers and heck, fire rifles, and some of the raffles are unbelievable. I won about an $1,100 Bison football tailgating setup. Awesome. So one year, and there's a raffle ahead of time for several prizes, which again are quite nice, usually involving like half a beef or TVs or any number of different things. So yeah, there's certainly one of the things because it's a pretty big event, and there's also adult beverages involved. It is limited to 21 and older. So we used to have children there, but that became impractical at some point when the venues set up their own bars in there. We no longer could do that, unfortunately.
I love it. Yeah, well, and I'll just say the chili cook-off is got a legendary reputation in the state, right? It's very well known.
When I was chairman or president of the API, I actually got a team from Seattle that had heard about it and wanted to come out and be in the event, and they did. Unfortunately, they expected to win, and so they didn't come back because they didn't win. But they didn't realize, I don't think, at what level of a charity event it was, rather than a official chili cook-off competition.
Right. Well, have you got a website or a Facebook page, anything like that?
Well, you can go to Williston Basin API and just Google that, and you'll come up with the Williston Basin API chapter webpage. And on that page, you can select the links. It'll direct you to information about the chili cook-off, donations if you wish to. We take all kinds of donations, and we acknowledge our donors all the way from 100 on up, in classes of bronze, silver, gold, diamond, platinum, and black gold, depending on the level of the donations. And then we take gifts as well to give away as door prizes, and those we try to value them appropriately and acknowledge them and dollar-wise to get them a level of recognition for if they donate a very nice prize. So, and then later on in the evening, we have Slam Obama, who's a fantastic band, music, dance band, goes on until about 11:30. It's a packed event. If you come there, you can expect to be in a line to get in, and it's quite the fun deal. It's like you say, it's pretty well known, and the waiting list to get in as a team is sometimes years waiting, unless you can find somebody who will co-op with you on a site, because there's a limited number of spots. And so it's very, very well known and popular event. It's
like Green Bay Packer tickets. Someone's got to die before you can get in there. Jeez.
That was the joke for a long time.
And we're talking about the 38th annual API Williston Chili Cook-Off happening in the Grand Williston, February 9th, 2019. Doors open at 3 p.m. Chili is served at 5 p.m. And go ahead and mention a few of your sponsors, maybe some of the big ticket sponsors that pay to get their name out there and let people know that they're a part of that. Do you have any of the big sponsors this year?
Well, we have a lot of the usual ones. A lot of them are the team sponsors, like J-Mac and Halliburton and Schlumberger and MDU, just to name a few. But it's all, a lot of them are the same ones, just like we mentioned, to get in. But once they get a spot, Baker's another one. It's hard to get them out unless you can work out a deal to co-sponsor a spot with them, and that's happened a lot. Because we love it when we get more companies involved. It's just more money for the charities and donations that the API gives out, and they get a little recognition for it.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate the time today, and looks like we'll be seeing you February 9th at 3 o'clock at the Grand Williston for the 38th Annual Cook-Off. Did we leave anything out?
There's some. If you really want to see some fun things, get there early and before the food's served, because it's usually from about 3 on, maybe even a little bit earlier than that, actually, when the teams get there. But they have a lot of games that the team members participate in out on the floor there that are somewhat entertaining.
Well,
to say the least.
Since you brought it up, I didn't want to ask, but I will now. What time do you guys let teams start setting up?
Well, they usually start coming in and, about daybreak, actually, because people, it's so, it's such a big event. People often come in and get a room the night before and then start, because when you see, again, there's also a best booth competition. And I mean to tell you, some of the booths that are built there are out of this world. I mean, it takes all of 6-7 hours just to put them together.
Well, I've been told Slamabama is good and everything, but the real entertainment's between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. when the teams are setting up and starting to maybe have a little festivity going, a little competition, that sort of thing, and then the people aren't there yet, so their manners aren't 100% yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of inter-team banter and stuff going on early on when they're cooking their food and setting up their booths and everything, and prior to the official opening of the doors.
Well, yeah, that's always the fun part. And so to be a fly on the wall during that time is always the best. I mean, that's good times there. But, well, all right, sir, thank you much. And we'll, any of these events you got coming in the future, just shoot me a line and we'll get you on, okay?
All right, sounds good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jason.